Hold off on relaxing until you've boiled yourself to death. The class of wide-eyed alien pupils looked at the human guest lecturer, and Professor Zal's voice shook with a mixture of incredulity and terror. Corporal Jonas the alien's expressions didn't soften to explain, but Kane blinked at the query. He had seen many odd responses since humans started merging with the Galactic Academy, but this was new. No, it's simply hot water. It's called a hot spring, and it's ideal for relaxing after a hard mission. Kane said, "Believe me, it's totally safe. The water isn't that hot, just enough to relax your muscles. You're from Earth, a death planet," but maybe he mumbled, "safe for you," as he clicked his mandibles anxiously while looking at the class. With their eyes flitting between Kane and the projection screen behind him, which showed a picture of an Earth hot spring with steam rising from the water, the students nodded in unison. You willingly sit in this hot water when one of the smaller aliens, a six-limbed Carry called Alith, lifted his quivering claws. "It's called a self-care routine, helps with stress," Kane shrugged. The group burst into quiet conversation on muscle recovery and other things that keep the body healthy. Most animals found it unfathomable to submerge themselves in warm water. On worlds with somewhat milder climates, temperature extremes were infrequent. Kane could see the wheels moving in their brains as they attempted to make sense of what they had just heard and how they understood survival. Kane laughed. "It's not just hot springs." Another pupil, a towering, green-skinned Taroth called Grok, leaned forward, his big saucer-like eyes wide with disbelief. "As you are aware, we have a long list of self-care activities. Massages, saunas, cold showers, and even cryotherapy. When the word struck the classroom like a shockwave, a number of youngsters visibly flinched, their faces showing a combination of surprise and dread. Slowly, Professor Z interrupted, saying, "You intentionally expose yourself to sub-zero temperatures." "Yeah," C said nonchalantly, "it's good for the immune system and speeds up recovery. You should try it sometime." When I say that won't be happening, I believe I'm speaking for everyone here. Professor Z shook his head in response. "Most of our home planets are at risk of death from sub-zero temperatures. I realize that a lot of what we humans do may seem excessive to other species, but you have to realize that Earth has formed us to be very tough. It's all about keeping balance." Kane chuckled, but he could sense the humor wasn't shared. He cleared his throat. "The body adjusts by cooling down too much and warming up too much." He still looks like he may faint and raises his claws once again. "Are the massages you described safe, or at least completely safe?" "It simply involves pressing on certain body spots to release tension while crushing each other's muscles." "That sounds barbarous," Youth gasped. "It's not as severe as it seems. It's all about finding the appropriate amount of pressure, and there's even a method called deep tissue massage that gets in there and works out the knots." Grok inquired, which aren't really knots, but rather the changing of his green skin to a light hue. Kane comforted them, even though he could tell that the explanation wasn't helping. "Kane, I know that's only a phrase for muscular strain, but I can assure you that it feels fantastic afterward." Professor Z still seemed nervous, but he appeared to collect himself. "Kane, Corporal, if you could describe another part of your practice that could include less physical extremities, is there something more gentle that would be helpful, in my opinion? We also take lengthy baths, where you soak for a while with oils or salts. It's a really soothing experience," Kane thought as he scratched his chin. Elf was really alarmed. "Are they corrosive?" "No, they're simply minerals that are meant to soothe the body." The class became quiet once again, and the pupils were obviously unsure of how to handle this. Kane questioned if he had gone too far since, while he had previously come across countries with peculiar customs, this was the first time he had ever understood how bizarre human behaviors may seem to others. Humans must have a pain tolerance much higher than any known species to submit their bodies to such extremes for comfort, Professor Zal said in a calmer but still cautious tone before trailing off, shaking his head as if he had run out of words. Kane grinned as he realized that this wasn't the first time that people have misinterpreted us. "Sure, we're built tough, but these things aren't just about pain, they also make us feel better and recover more quickly. You may be shocked to learn how much we truly like these exercises. Is there anything you humans do that doesn't entail some kind of danger?" Grano said again, his voice barely audible above a whisper. Kane's smile expanded. There's always meditation, but even that can get intense if you're not ready for it, he said. The joke fell flat, and the aliens looked even more uneasy. I need a way to bridge the gap between their worlds before the class started thinking that Earthlings were a species of thrill-seeking maniacs, C sighed deeply. He had to own that he didn't anticipate a presentation about human relaxation methods to be this contentious. Kane shifted his position and looked at the rows of wide-eyed aliens, each of whom seemed more appalled than the previous. All right, C said, raising his hands in a soothing gesture. Perhaps the deep tissue massages and hot spring cryotherapy are a little intense by your standards, but not all aspects of a human self-care routine are that drastic. For instance, simple, harmless Ilth cautiously raised one of his claws, stretching. How could that possibly be dangerous? It's not risky at all. We only need to spend a few minutes stretching our muscles to increase their flexibility and avoid being hurt. Kane grabbed on the question. For the first time since the presentation started, the class as a whole let out a breath and seemed to relax. Even Professor Zoe appeared to relax in his chair, his mandibles no longer clicking uneasily, demonstrating that stretching is a commonplace daily activity. The moment of peace was brief, however, and Kane said, "It's good for the body, helps with recovery, and makes you feel better." He narrowed his enormous eyes, but didn't humans sometimes crack objects when stretching? Uncertain of what he meant, Kane repeated. Grok's eyes remained fixed. We've heard people make popping or cracking noises when they move or twist certain body parts. Is that typical? You mean joints that are cracking? When Kane realized what had frightened them, he laughed. Yeah, sometimes it's just air bubbles in the joints, doesn't hurt or anything, he said. The class, which had just begun to relax, gasped once again. It's okay for some individuals to purposefully loosen up because it feels wonderful. His 6 limbs are rigid as if he were preparing for an imaginary blow. Your joints produce explosive noises, but you discover that relaxing isn't explosive, just a slight pop, and Professor Z's face twists in shock. It's a harmless thing, we've gotten used to no harm done, Kane emphasized, attempting to lessen the effect of his remarks. The uncomfortable quiet that ensued informed him he wasn't gaining any points with that explanation. Kane made the decision to change strategies. Let's discuss something else. Stretching and joint popping may seem odd, but how about something more straightforward like grooming? He saw a glimmer of interest in a couple of the children when he observed how people take care of their skin, hair, and nails to keep themselves feeling and looking beautiful. Professor Z arched an eyebrow, indicating apprehension. How does this grooming procedure function effectively? Kane started by taking a bath, when we naturally use soap and other items to wash our skin. Gro tilted slightly in. There were just warm water and no very high or low temperatures. Kane confirmed that the temperature was pleasant. The class seemed to be reasonably settled after this, but one of the smaller fourth-year pupils with light complexion timidly inquired, and the pointed instrument's seed blinked at the sharp objects. Yes, the fourth IE's voice trembled more. We've heard that people cut their faces and bodies with knives. Yes, some of us use razors to shave our faces in order to remove facial hair, but it's quite safe. Oh, you mean shaving? C waved dismissively. C saw too late that his effort at comfort had backfired, and his voice struck a high-pitched squeak. Why would you do that to yourselves? It's not a big deal. He just took a firm hand, and the class burst into a chorus of alarmed talk. This time, Kim was a bit more protective. Face hair grows quickly and may be uncomfortable for some people, so we shaved it off. Grant's eyes were wide with shock that you would voluntarily scratch your flesh with a sharp thing that we don't scrape. Kim clarified that it's a controlled movement, so don't worry, nobody is being injured. Another student in the rear questioned, in a bewildered tone, shaves have been around for millennia, but why not let the hair remain? Kim felt the faint stubble on his chin and said, I know it seems strange, but it's part of our self-care and we take pride in how we look, and shaving is just one way we do that. The class seemed to tremble as a whole, even Professor Zhao looked pale. Some people like the clean-shaven look, some keep the beard, Some don't. It's a choice. Students quiet as they attempt to understand the strange nuances of human behavior. I don't understand how a species could endure so much pain. Your grooming practices sound like survival rituals, not relaxation. C shifted uneasily, unsure of how to steer the conversation in a safer direction. The more he explained, the more horrified they seemed. Perhaps we could talk about something else, like exercise or nutrition, both of which are important aspects of human self-care and neither involve blades or extreme temperatures. Kane was about to reply when he realized he was now too deeply involved with these aliens. Human self-care likely did seem like survival training. What should he say about exfoliation next? Perhaps he should leave it out for the time being because he had already given them much to think about. Sensing that the class was on the verge of complete collapse, C groaned. Every effort to explain human self-care had been received with complete fear and astonishment, but he couldn't simply leave them in this state. He had to demonstrate to them that people weren't all right, reckless maniacs with a sweeping motion. Ken stated, "Let's get away from the more extreme stuff. I know that some of our methods may seem crazy, but there's a rationale for everything. How about we concentrate on something that everyone can comprehend, better relaxation? Not the massages or hot springs this time, just plain rest." Even Professor Z leaned forward a little, his antenna twitching cautiously in curiosity. "Had you heard of meditation?" The class seemed skeptical but open to hearing him out. Kane inquired in the hopes that this would be a less contentious subject. Granick was doubtful, but C nodded. The meditation involves sitting still and breathing correctly. It's all about focusing within and soothing the mind, no heat, cold, or sharp objects, while sitting silently and emptying your mind. Some of the kids seem at ease after hearing that there would be no physical pain or severe heat. Some even ventured to lift a claw, but it didn't hurt. C didn't even grin. It's intended to help reduce stress, control anxiety, and enhance mental clarity. For the first time during the presentation, there was no gasping or horrified muttering, and the class exchanged glances, clearly intrigued by the idea of such a simple and peaceful practice. Kane took this as a victory, and his trembling voice spoke up again. How often people meditate depends on the individual. Kane said everyone in the galaxy knew that Earth was renowned for being one of the most dangerous planets in known space, and its inhabitants were seen as equally daunting. This creates tension in the room whenever Earth was mentioned. Some people meditate daily, while others do so occasionally. Meditation is flexible, but it's a crucial part of maintaining balance, especially given everything humans deal with, such as the stress and chaos of Earth being a death world. Kane chose to embrace the idea that people must be strong not just physically but also emotionally, since our planet has thrown us everything it has, including earthquakes, hurricanes, and more. Diseases of predators and our adaptation. Humans utilize meditation as a strategy to control their mental endurance because it's not just about surviving, it's about flourishing. Granick raised a clawed hand. C nodded. Meditation, breathing techniques, and physical exercise are all intended to maintain mental acuity, which is why we are not just survival but also problem solvers. The students looked at each other more, but this time the expressions were more serious and less scared. At last, Professor Zal spoke in a controlled tone. "Corporal Kane, you've made it clear that people approach self-care differently. What you consider necessary, others may consider dangerous, but there's one thing I still don't understand. Why put yourself through such intense practices at all? Why expose yourself to hot springs, cold therapy blades, and the like? Your meditation practice seems peaceful enough, so why not concentrate on that alone?" C raised an eyebrow. "Professor, humans are about balance. We push our bodies to the limit, but we also know when to back off." King carefully thought about what he was saying. Face danger head-on because we've learned that challenges lead to progress on all levels, physical, mental, and emotional, and it feels wonderful to emerge stronger on the other side. The chamber was quiet as the aliens took in what he had to say. Although Earth had molded people differently by forming them via fire, frost, turmoil, and quiet, Kane understood that these species were from worlds where survival wasn't as severe and balance was maintained without such extremes. At last, he said more. Now that you're more curious than afraid, self-care is about improving yourself rather than simply unwinding. Every time we stretch, meditate, or take an ice bath, we're preparing our bodies and minds to manage whatever life throws at us. Kane grinned precisely. We don't simply rest for the sake of relaxing, we recuperate, we get better, we adapt. Grano inclined his head despite the hot water that life threw at him. Although the class was silent for a while after C's laugh, Kane could see they were taking in what they had learnt. They would never completely get the human approach to self-care, but at least they were beginning to appreciate the rationale behind it. While I can't say I would ever suggest such techniques to my pupils, I now have a better knowledge of why people are so resilient. Professor Z rose from his seat, his posture more relaxed than it had been before the lecture started. Corporal Kane, thank you for your informative presentation. Thank you for listening, Kane nodded. We may be a little unconventional, but it has worked for us. Bilth paused before making a hesitant motion with his claws. Would you please demonstrate some of his tranquil meditation for us, Corporal Kane? C's smile grew as the class moved to obey his directions, making sure that everyone found a seat and settled in. Although they believed that humans were crazy for taking hot spring baths and cracking joints, they were at least open to trying the more tranquil side of self-care. Kane took a deep breath and started leading them in a basic meditation in the hopes that by the end, the alien students would at least have a small appreciation for how humans approach balance and perhaps even stop believing that humans are completely insane.